Dr. Sonnen, I've set the tube for extraction. There's something oddly familiar about this one. The gates of the tank rumbled and slowly slid apart, allowing water into the airlock. Then, following the influx of water, there was a broken mass of flesh, a sinewy mess resembling a pile of burlap and dirt. Then the pile seemed to move. It shifted positions. Smokes, Sonnen said. You're right, Forrest. How in the hell does something like that survive here? Actually, I suppose it might not have survived after all. Let's go poke it with a stick. Drain the airlock. Sonnen, the lead exploratory extraction specialist at Pod 23 on Europa Station, stood up from his seat to expose his white rubber pants, with the government insignia on the sides. It was a graphic of an angry-faced eagle flying away from Earth with abandon. It was black against the whiteness of his pants. On his upper body was a regularly issued black impermeable jacket used for unknown objects of extraction. He moved with his precise manner directly to the three hooks beside the airlock outer door and pulled off one of the protection masks that hung there, connecting it to the slips attached to the neckpiece of his impermeable jacket. He then tightened the strap behind his head, making the translucent tubes in the carbon filter attached to the front to create a comfortable suction over his cleanly shaven face and his piercing blue eyes. This is only the fifth time I've come across anything living at this depth, Sonnen said, and every time something strange happens. Remember the ichthyosaur-shaped beetle from a month ago? That thing sprayed ink all over my last suit because you didn't increase the air pressure properly and were too slow to open the airlock doors so I could get out. I don't mind poking it with a stick, Dr. Sonnen, if you'd prefer I risk the potential ink blast. Although from the scanners this thing looks like it's about to go under rigor mortis. Never mind that, Forrest. Just be smart about the barometer gauge and be prepared to open the doors when I tell you. Otherwise you'll be paying for the new extraction suit. Sonnen glared at Forrest slightly, making sure he realized that this was serious. This wasn't a lucrative job, and life form extraction was low down on Europa Station's list of priorities, mineral extraction being the highest. He was the bottom of the totem pole and therefore couldn't be seen to be wasting supplies or extraction gear. He changed the subject, assuming that Forrest understood that message. Could you get me another half-gauge stick from the biopsy kit, Sonnen asked. Yes, said Forrest, appreciating the change in subject. I was thinking the same thing. It looks like it doesn't need the full gauge because it's leaking fluid already. Forrest was a burly man. His chest stuck out without trying, and his face was leathery from aerospace missions that radiated his skin. Although he was younger than Sonnen, he looked much older. He was shorter than Sonnen, but that never made Sonnen feel physically superior. Forrest could have eaten him as a mid-afternoon snack, but as Sonnen often assured himself, he was likely too stupid to do so. In all of the ways that Sonnen was light-featured, with blond hair, blue eyes, and clean-shaven, Forrest was his foil, with dark features, black curly hair, brown eyes, and a beard. Forrest's face displayed focus at the moment, as he rummaged through the biopsy kit for a half-gauge stick. The biopsy kit had 10 sticks in it when Sonnen had been given permission to explore Sector 23 for extractable life forms. They'd already used 5 of them on the previous extractions that had yielded little in the way of publishable data. The ichthyosaur beetle had been a novel find, but found little interest amongst the financial committee. Only the astrobiologist faculty found it fascinating, and they didn't get much money to fund their research either. Sonnen had received his doctoral degree in aerospace engineering, and had designed most of the modern extraction gear for mineral and fuel extraction used on Europa Station, Fort Titan, and Mars Depot near Celestial Colony 1. Not by himself, of course, these were cooperative actions, but everyone knew where the vision and design came from. But Sonnen hated mineral and fuel extraction because it was uninteresting. It was boring. There was no adventure. So he fought for the money to do exploratory extraction in places that people hadn't been. It was a job with no goal but to see new things. An ichthyosaur beetle was just the latest for him. Forrest looked up, satisfied. There we go, he said. One more left after this one. One more? What the hell, Forrest? I've only used 2 of these. This is the 3rd. There should be 2 more left. I specifically told you to order 5. I did order 5 of each, Forrest admitted, but I mistakenly perforated the seal on one and now it's unusable. Damn it, Sonnen cursed. Forrest, this stuff costs a lot of money, and if we waste money, they won't let us do this anymore. Stop being so damn clumsy. I apologize, Dr. Sonnen, Forrest said in his most insincere tone. Won't happen again. You're right, it won't, because they're going to shut us down, Sonnen muttered, and then to himself he cursed again as he grabbed the stick from Forrest and prepared to enter the airlock. One more left, damn it all. Sonnen put Forrest's stupidity out of his mind and prepared the stick. It was a steel rod with a crystal tube at the top that would clamp down and suck in material. The steel at the bottom would form a chisel in case the UOE was a rock and needed to be chipped slightly before a sample could be taken. The crystal tube would cover the sample and then seal itself using a vacuum held inside the steel shaft. Sonnen used the half-gauge stick when something was already using a fluid so that he could save the full-gauge sticks for things like rocks that required chiseling and often had larger samples. Depending on what sort of information came back from the lab at Pod 8, the entire unidentified object of extraction could be taken and analyzed by the extraction analysis team. The ichthyosaur beetle was only one of his 5 previous life forms that had been poked with a stick to actually be fully extracted. The astrobiologist faculty had lobbied heavily for its analysis. Sonnen tore the seal out of the stick and pushed the flat red button beside the airlock door aptly labeled Open, and then punched in his 7-digit access code. The door parted in the middle and slid away horizontally. He stepped through and got the usual bath of disinfectant spray. He often opened his stance and raised his arms to make sure the spray hit him in all the necessary areas, spinning in a circle as he did so. The door shut again behind him. Then he opened the next set of doors, which required him to spin a wheel valve to unlock it. At the last turn of the valve, it required him to punch in his 7-digit access code again, before 5 pins could be released from the door's frame. He did this and immediately heard air rushing in from empty seals. "Damn it, Forrest, the damn barometer, remember?" He bellowed into the comm unit connected to his mask. Suddenly, the air stopped flowing and he finished the last turn of the valve and pulled back the door, revealing the brown mass he'd seen on the scanners. He stepped into the extraction room and closed the wheel valve door behind him. It closed with a creaking noise and thud, but there was no noise of suction. He waited for a second. Nothing. "Forrest, smokes, could you repressurize the damn thing already?" Then he finally heard the suction and a click as the 5 pins went back into the door frame. He was alone with this thing now. He inched toward it, making observations as he did in the comm unit that was programmed to record everything he said. Approximately 1.5 meters long, abundance of hair-like material emanating from the head end, likely between 50 to 60 Earth kilograms, covered in what looks like tree bark, perhaps some kind of flora from its deep-sea habitat. Then he paused as if he had looked at the lower half of the specimen. There was something strange about the look of the material. I don't know why, but something about that looks like the bottom half is synthetic, which is impossible. But I'd swear that was industrial rubber if I didn't know any better. I better take a sample of that too and see if the Pod 8 lab can determine its composition. If life forms down here produce their own rubber, we might have just the right reason to continue exploration. Sonnen smiled in spite of himself. This could be the specimen he'd been looking for. He readied the stick and poked the specimen with it. As the crystal tube opened and closed on some of the oozing liquid and caught some of the rubber-like substance, the life form jerked to life, forcing Sonnen to stumble backwards. Thick red fluid flew everywhere and splattered against the screen on Sonnen's mask. Sonnen's heart stopped momentarily as panic set in. "What the hell is this thing? It sure isn't dead," he finally screamed when his voice returned to him. "Smokes, Forrest, get me out of here!" He heard the vacuum pop and click as the pins came out behind him. Then the creature jerked again. Sonnen began observing again in a terrified voice. "Object appears to have... Hurry, Forrest! Appears to have non-aquatic mobility and reasonable muscle tone. Smokes, Forrest, come on!" Then the specimen rolled over, revealing more of its shape. It had a ghastly face with demented and grotesque black eyes that looked as though they had been pulled in all directions, ripping open the flesh. Instead of some kind of nose, there was just a gaping, oozing hole. Sonnen shuddered. Then it revealed 2 long, slippery black arms that sloppily began reaching for him. He ignored this and began frantically turning the wheel valve. The specimen reached his leg and then let loose a terrible scream, full of melancholy and horror and pure ear-shattering rage. He ignored this and began frantically turning the wheel valve. The monster bellowed and hissed and spewed more thick mucus-like fluid around the room. Finally, the airlock door opened and Sonnen grabbed the stick and rolled through onto his stomach and kicked the door closed, making a bang and the expected vacuum suction noise. Then the blast of disinfectant spray hit him again. and he just lay there on the floor of the room, panting and trying to collect himself. He couldn't get the ringing in his ears to stop, and his heart was still beating out of his chest. He spoke into his comm unit. Specimen appears to have functional vocal cords. Another novelty. Finally, he thought about what had just transpired, tried to be rational, and then he pushed the flat red button and entered his 7-digit access code to return to the computer room, where Forrest stood looking at him with his confused brown eyes. "What the hell?" Forrest said, before Sonnen cut him off. "Shut up, Forrest. I need you to call someone for me. Ivania, the receptionist. Ivania, at the Chalomiatrics ward on Pod 9. Get me an appointment with Dr. Karen Bobble. I'm going to clean up and submit this stick to the lab." Sonnen walked towards the door to the sanitation zone to get his things clean and protect him from whatever had been in that liquid that sprayed all over him. Then he remembered something and turned to Forrest. "Hey, and after you finish making that call, make sure you fix the damn barometer." Then he walked out the door.